Now, an analysis of approved budgets shows Nigerian states have set aside a combined 525.3 billion naira for security votes and related spending between 2023 and 2025. Figures from budget-backed Open States show security allocations kept rising even as killings, kidnappings, and violent attacks spread nationwide. Spending grew from 150.47 billion naira in 2023 to 210.68 billion naira in 2025, an increase of over 40%. Borno, Anambra, Delta, and Benue states recorded the highest spending, while several states reported low or unclear figures, raising fresh concerns about accountability and impact. Meanwhile, the federal government has signed a $9 million contract with US-based lobbying firm DCI Group to counter allegations of a Christian genocide as deadly attacks continue across the country. To further discuss this, I'm joined by Jaiye Gaskia, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We also have joining us Zariyi Yusuf, advocate for justice, former national coordinator, Middle Belt Patriots, also joining us here in our studio, but from our newsroom. Hello, Zariyi. Okay, Zariyi will be joining us shortly. Jaiye, what's your take, first of all? This whole situation. I mean, we're seeing over 500 billion spent by states as security vote. And I mean, we understand that security votes are hardly ever accounted for, but we're seeing over 500 billion being spent by states. Some unclear. What's your take on this?
So essentially, the real problem with the security vote is the lack of accountability. The fact that it's vague, it's broadly just called security vote. And the fact that also the Constitution also then commits a second blunder by making security an exclusive, putting security on the exclusive list for the federal government. But then you then allow state governments to also have budgets for security votes. It is that gap that allows that lacuna in terms of a vacuum, in terms of clarity. And so what happens is that state governments just put lump sums and call it security vote. Some state governments have even become more clever than the others. There is no item called security vote, but you find some security issues under service-wide, votes and the rest of that. But essentially, you then claim that the state assemblies then claim that they don't have powers over it. And that's the part that is very worrisome for me. Because, one, the Constitution is silent, but what the Constitution is very clear on is that the power to appropriate, which is the power of the legislature, the power to appropriate also includes the power for oversight. So if you appropriate, regardless of whether it's indicated or not, there's a breakdown. If it has passed through you and you have appropriated it, then you have the power of oversight over it. So for me, I think that basically it's the weakness of the state legislatures and the fact that they prefer this political arrangement and political agreement where they are in collusion with the governors, because it's also out of these security votes that when the necessity to sort people out, including to get bills passed, is from the security votes that all of this also come from. So therefore, the complicity of the legislature in that
excuse?
Yes. No, it cannot be excused, okay. but then can be explained.
Okay, can be explained.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say this. While we have this kind of situation, we have state governors who believe that they are the chief security officers of their state. And they are doing all that they can to secure their states. Unconfirmed reports have it that some states are cutting deals with the bandits, giving them millions of dollars, exchanging hands back and forth without any accountability whatsoever. But I think we have Zariyi ready now. Zariyi Yusuf is the advocate for justice, former national coordinator, Middle Belt Patriots, joins us from our newsroom. Hello, Zariyi, are you there?
I don't know if you could hear me.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can hardly hear you, but we see your lips moving, but no sound.
Okay.
Can you say something?
Am I audible? Yeah.
Okay,
am I
yes,
audible now?
fantastic, fantastic. So, Zari, this conversation here now, we've seen monies go out. I mean, we've seen that analysis by budget-sponsored Open States. See here, over 500 billion. Now, Jaiye has spoken about the fact that these monies pass through the legislature, but it looks as if they don't have an oversight over it because of maybe political gains. But let's talk about the other bit about monies moving back and forth from the state coffers, so to speak, to cut deals so that their states are protected. What does that say of the efforts to protect their state?
Well, I don't know if I'd call that any efforts to protect states, the citizens, the victims, and all of that. When you look at what amount of money goes into that, and then the outcome of it, you'd realize we are actually not fighting terrorism. It's become a multi-billion naira enterprise in Nigeria. Somehow, the victims, unfortunately, the politicians, and those amongst the politicians who I believe are the patrons of this deadly group that kills people, have gotten used to, mass killings, and there isn't any pushback from, the victims or Nigerians. So our war against terrorism, in the sense of Nigeria, is all about telling people we have spent billions and billions and billions, but basically nothing has stopped. The terrorists are getting more sophisticated, more people are getting killed, more of our territory is being lost, and there is basically nothing sure for it. So when we talk about those huge sums, it's a criminal enterprise to begin with, spending those huge sums. Basically, what does it take to arm the military, to boost their morale and have these terrorists eliminated, rather, than passing huge sums of money to them? We know very well what they do with the money. They acquire more arms. That basically is it. They acquire more arms. The government knows it. The people moving those funds into their hands, they know it, but they keep doing it.
Mm.
So I think it's a matter of sponsoring terrorism and making it look as if we are trying to end it.
Jaiye, let me come back to Jaiye here. Jaiye, what he said about the monies that are going out, the military is spread thin. In fact, the security agencies are sort of spread thin. But we're hearing these conversations about monies being budgeted, and we're seeing the monies going out, or we're hearing that the monies are going out, but we're not seeing anybody being prosecuted. For instance, there's a case in court right now that has been going on since 2022 of terrorists, about 5 of them. They're in court since 2022. That does not paint a picture of seeking to deter them. But then you also hear of this story, this one in Kogi or thereabout, Ayetoro Kiribunu Development. The organization is the one doing the negotiation. Yeah. Is there any backing from government? How is this even happening?
Okay. So, I mean, 3 very quick things that I'm going to, in response to the issues that you have raised, that I'm going to touch on. The first is that our approach to countering terrorism, to counter-terrorism, and the fact that the bit that the military and the security forces are doing, I think it would be very unfair to say that they are not doing much. We can say
I use the phrase spread.
No. I'm just referring to what might be the perception. I think that they are doing quite enough. It's not. They are doing a lot. It's not enough. But the challenge with that is that that's not really their job. That's not their job. You have terrorism and violent extremism at the tail end of a failure of governance, of the lack of delivery of basic services. It's this kind of grievances that push people to either join up with the bandits, with the criminal gangs, with the organized crime criminal gangs and the rest of that, or that also makes it impossible for them to be able to also defend themselves, to mobilize against those kind of things. So we have to sort out the question of governance. And this is where state governments and local governments actually come in, because there's very little that the military can do. It's also why you find a situation where you have military clearances, and as soon as the military leaves, terrorists return, because the military cannot stay there, forever. So unless we tune our security architecture in such a manner that from the ground up, local vigilantes, state neighborhood watches, whatever they are called, security, federal security apparatus, that they all work together in sync, and that actually at the level of state governments, that those basic services are provided. Because if you look at the 528 billion combined that state governments have spent on security between 2023 and now, without prejudice to some governors that are actually really working. But if you look at the average, and you look at that, and you look at what that amount of money could have done, for example, in just enabling communities to actually provision their own security. Okay? So if you enable the neighborhood watches, if you empower youths in communities and they have things that they are doing, you can see that you are beginning to build bulwarks against all of this. So what happens right now is a situation where you find that communities like the one in Kogi, Zamfara recently, what communities are doing is that they feel abandoned, they feel helpless. So what they do is they resort to self-help, and this self-help now is not in the question of a civilian JTF. It's that, look, okay, we would negotiate. So they negotiate for release of abducted persons, but they also negotiate with the criminal gangs and bandits to leave their communities alone. But you see, you now find a situation where individual communities are doing this. So it becomes a competition, rivalry.
Okay, Zariyi, this matter of allowing the local institutions or local groups to take care of themselves, empowering the youth and all of that. The president made a call to the National Assembly one time that they should expedite actions for the establishment of state and local police. One would think that the legislature would have put aside everything else and get this done so that quickly we can get the state police and local policing more effective than what it is right now, and get more hands on deck to solve this matter once and for all. What do you think?
Well, locally, I don't know if anything has happened. I do know of something that took place some time back in Kwara, where members of an armed group were caught, and they happened to be members of Miyetti Allah. And then the National Security Advisor said the federal government was aware of them. If that is an attempt to implement community policing or set of vigilante, I think it's counter to what the real mission is. Because when I'm in my village and I find the armed men in my village coming from the extraction of the people that have been killing people, raping women, sacking communities, I think it's an escalation of the violence being meted against us. Just because it came in the name of government doesn't make any sense. Another thing I have a problem with is, I think it was, in the case of this Ehua abduction or thereabout, when the NSA was giving a certain kind of assurance to people that they are safe in the hand of the captors. What that says to you is, of course, the government is in touch with those who captured them. But the locals are basically doing everything. The fact that at some point they paid 15 million to secure the release of, I think, between 5-7 people, I can't really tell, where some came out alive, some came out dead, and none of the attackers has been either identified, arrested, or neutralized. And another set has just been released. So it leaves you asking whether the government itself actually wants to fight terrorism. I would actually disagree with anybody who says, well, the fact that the military is trying, we would acknowledge that. But whether they have achieved much in terms of killing, the terrorists, stopping this issue, I don't see much of it happening because, like you asked, who have we ever seen brought to book or sentenced to death because of terrorism in Nigeria? We haven't seen more. We only saw 2 that looks as if the state want to punish them for simply fighting against, this terrorist. We had the case of Samuel Jackson and this fellow that was just sentenced to death in Kaduna State. And what was their crime? Basically resisting terrorists. So it's a big question whether actually we are fighting terrorism or we are trying to institutionalize something. Those huge sums, those billions, what are they going into? I guess most of it, if not all of it, goes towards payment of terrorists. And basically that is what arms them. That's all. I think we need to be that blunt.
Thank you very much, Zariyi Yusuf, advocate for justice, former national coordinator, Middle Belt Patriots, also joined us from our newsroom and here in our studio in Abuja. And Jaiye Gaskia, public affairs analyst, thank you for coming in this evening. I wish we had more time for this conversation, but we will make out. We will make out more time, and if it's okay with you, we'll bring you back in.
That's okay.
So we can really look at this. There's a lot to unbundle, so we'll do this again.
Thank you.
Promise. I make that promise. Thank you so much.